So let me start today with this. What's the true definition of the Baseball Hall of Fame? Why do we have it? Why do we celebrate it? Why do we hold it to such a gold standard? See, when I grew up, I was always taught you have to be damn good to be in the Hall of Fame. You can't just be a good player. You have to be great. You have to be the best of your era. You have to hold a record of some sort. You have to be a part of an exclusive club. 500 homers, 3,000 strikeouts, 300 wins, 3,000 hits. You had to qualify in one of those categories to even get consideration. If you weren't there, tough luck. You weren't getting in. Now, over the past 10 years or so, those doctrines, which made the Hall of Fame so celebrated and made it so exclusive, have all of a sudden gone down the drain. Now we're seeing WAR become the benchmark for Hall of Fame candidacy. Oh, his WAR's higher than his. He deserves to be in. His WAR's on the cusp. We'll have to re-examine his case later. His WAR's way too low. There's no chance for him getting in. That's it. It's all about WAR and Jaws. What's his 7-year peak? What's his 7-year peak WAR? If it's good enough, we'll let him in. Doesn't matter about the totals. Doesn't matter about longevity. Was he good for 7 years or so? If he was, he's in. That's it. The Hall of Fame has been desecrated over the past 10 years by these measures. By sabermetricians, more specifically. They're the ones who have introduced these measures into the mainstream. I watched MLB Network a couple of days ago. I'm seeing people making serious cases for Scott Rowland, Andrew Jones, Aramis Ramirez. I'm a Cubs fan. But Aramis Ramirez should be nowhere near the Hall of Fame. How there's even a case to be made is beyond me. But I do have a question, a serious one, for all of you sabermetricians watching or listening to this show. If you love WAR, if you love Jaws and 7-year peaks, why is it that you won't support Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens? Bonds and Clemens have some of the highest WARs ever seen. Over 100. That's slam dunk Hall of Fame worthy. So why is it that you won't come out and support them? I know, the steroids are an issue, but you're the same people who've already let in possible steroid users. Jeff Bagwell, Greg Biggio, Pudge Rodriguez. I'm not saying those guys aren't great players, but I am saying that they've been connected to steroids before, like Piazza. So why is it that guys with out-of-this-world WARs receive no consideration, but guys who have meager WARs get in first ballot, no problem? Other guys who were connected to steroids get in. The two who were most prolifically connected get no consideration. Why is that? Look, I'm not a fan of cheating. The steroid era is a black mark on baseball's history. But I want to explain to you why Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, whether you're a sabermetrician or not, deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Look, it's called the steroid era for a reason, first of all. Everyone at that time did them. Have you heard of Jay Payton before? I don't think you did. The guy never hit more than 20 home runs in a season. He used steroids. Minor leaguers, to this day, are still caught using steroids and suspended. Just because you use doesn't mean you're a great baseball player. You don't turn into the Hulk and start hitting 70 home runs a season when you're on steroids. You have to have some talent to begin with. And in the cases of Bonds and Clemens, they had a lot of talent. They were already Hall of Fame worthy. Barry Bonds could have retired he would have gotten in. Already had 2 MVPs, 400 home runs, would have been a no-brainer. Same with Roger Clemens. He was already close to 3,000 strikeouts at 180 wins. He would have gotten there eventually, had they just retired at those times before using. A lot of other guys who've used steroids can't say the same thing. Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, Rafael Palmeiro. Great players, but they were nothing before the roids. Sammy Sosa hit 35, 36 homers a year, stole 30 bases. He would have been known as a very good player. Mark McGwire. He started using once he debuted and never stopped. What would he have looked like without steroids? Gary Sheffield. He got to 500 homers because of steroids. David Ortiz. David Ortiz in Minnesota hit 250, had about 20 home runs one season as a DH, goes to Boston, starts using, and now has 500 plus home runs. There's a difference between already having talent and using, already having numbers and using, and just using because you have no other options. Rafael Palmeiro, I mentioned his name. A 284 hitter, made an all-star team with the Cubs, hitting 9 home runs in one season as a first baseman. He was supposed to be a Mark Grace lookalike, but he used 500 homers, 3,000 hits. He could have gotten to 3,000 by himself without the roids, but I guarantee you he would not have gotten to 500 homers, which means that his Hall of Fame credentials are not really meaning anything. The guys who needed steroids to be great, who did not have track records before the steroids, should not be in. I agree with that. The guys I've mentioned really shouldn't get Hall of Fame consideration. Now, I do know some people who say, well, because they used, their numbers contributed to the story of the game. You can't tell, or you can't talk about the steroid era without bringing up those names. True. I understand that point. But they had no talent before. We shouldn't reward them for that. They shouldn't be rewarded for deciding to cheat, then achieving great numbers, great success. That's wrong. That's unfair to everybody who's in the Hall of Fame. It's unfair to every baseball player who still plays today. That sends out a bad message. Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens were already great. They were already on their way to the Hall of Fame. They deserve enshrinement. Oh, but their records are inflated. Their numbers are way too high. I know that. You think I like saying that Barry Bonds is technically the home run king? I don't take pleasure in saying that. I'm not happy to say it, but it is what it is. He hit enough home runs to beat Hank Aaron. Statistically, numbers-wise, Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens are high up in the record books. They didn't just hit 500 home runs or strike out 3,000 batters. They're up there. Significantly up there. We can't scrub their name from the history book. That's why I've always liked Pete Rose getting in too. Pete Rose's name will never be scrubbed from the history book. Why is he not in that? I know he gambled on the game, but he took no performance-enhancing drugs. His performance was not altered by gambling. And anyone who says that it was, anyone who says, oh, he bet during his playing days, he threw games, look at his totals. Do you really think Pete Rose was throwing games, yet somehow was the all-time hits king? That's a paradox. Makes no sense. They have the numbers. Bonds and Clemens have the numbers. They had numbers before they used. Why aren't they yet? You want to talk about WAR, sabermetricians? We'll talk about WAR. Barry Bonds, 162.8. 162.8 is Barry Bonds' career WAR. Unbelievable. One of the highest of all time. Roger Clemens, 139.2. 139.2 as a pitcher. Unbelievable. One of the highest of all time. Bonds is the home run king. Bonds is the walks king. Bonds' career had a 1,000 OPS. Roger Clemens, 350 wins, 4,600 strikeouts, 7 Cy Young Awards, Bonds 7 MVPs. I know they used, but they were without a doubt the best of their generation and one of the greatest players of all time. Shouldn't they deserve to be in? Remember, it's the steroid era. There's a reason why we call it the steroid era. It wasn't just them who took steroids. See, that's a fallacy. Everyone took steroids. The ones who were great were scrutinized. The ones who didn't benefit from them weren't even talked about. Like I said, Jay Payton. Did anyone talk about Jay Payton using steroids? No, no one cared. The guys who were at the top of their game, by using steroids, by getting that extra advantage, they were scrutinized. I would argue because they were scrutinized, they were the greatest of their era. Shouldn't they deserve a spot in Cooperstown? There are suspected cheaters, some admitted cheaters, already in. Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens had the numbers beforehand. They had the talent beforehand. That's different from guys like Palmeiro, Sosa, and McGwire, who really needed steroids to achieve their numbers. Bonds had 400 homers, then he used. Clemens, 180 wins, then he used. They were on their way there already. It's a shame that they did use. And it pains me to reward somebody for using steroids and reaping the financial benefits because of it. But the facts are the facts. These guys were the greatest of their era. I would argue Barry Bonds is one of the greatest players of all time. Steroids or not. Don't they deserve to be in Cooperstown? You will never erase their name from the record book. You're never going to nullify the numbers that they achieved. That's why Pete Rose should be in too. So why sit here and have a concerted effort to make sure that they don't get in? For them, this is symbolic. People already know about how great they were. The record books do not lie. This is just a symbol to show they deserve to be there. I guarantee you Bonds and Clemens themselves are not sweating about this. They're not thinking, oh, I hope I get in this year. I'm waiting for that call. They know how great they were. We all know how great they were. The only people in question are the baseball writers, people who vote for the award. They may acknowledge that these guys were great, but it is tough to vote for known steroid users. My plea to the BBWAA and to the voting body is this. You know they're great. You know where they stand in the record books. You know where they stood before they used steroids. Let them in. This is different from Sosa and McGwire and other known steroid users. These guys were there already. And it does pain me to say it. I am in no way a steroid guy. I'm not encouraging this stuff. It is a black mark on the game, no question. But we know how great these guys were. And you have to admit, it is a travesty that they're not in already. Steroids or not, we know how great they are. It is a shame that they're not there right now. I know it'll be awkward if they get in. I know it might be a little weird. Why are we rewarding these guys? But suspected users are in. Known users are in. Why can't they be in too? More to come here on Sports Talk Chicago. My interview with Scott Merkin comes up next, so stay tuned. Hey, do you want to make some money this weekend? What if I told you that I could offer you $250 free to bet on any game you want? Here's what you have to do. Go to sportstalkchicago.com/cash, sportstalkchicago.com/cash. You must be 21 plus. You must be an Illinois resident. You can bet $250 free on any game you want for this upcoming weekend. Bears are back at it on Sunday. College football, college basketball too, now in full swing. The opportunities are endless, and the money is waiting for you. All you have to do is go to sportstalkchicago.com/cash, sportstalkchicago.com/cash. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.